We're talking a lot about embodied living and collective healing and all these different ideas surrounding this ability to be in a fully embodied experience in life that involves getting out of your head, this space that we were taught to live life, to take in information, to make decisions, all these great things we were taught. However, never being taught how we bring in the rest of ourselves, how we bring in our felt experience in this world. And there's some other videos. There's no need to go stop this one and watch those ones first, but I will link some of the others if you're interested in being more immersed in the space after this video. But today I want to share more deeply about my story, right? How does a scientist on an engineer, myself on a path to get a PhD and understand all I can about the human mind, right? How do I end up teaching embodiment and being in this felt experience in this world? So I think that's a good place to begin, right? Being so absorbed in this headspace, the beautiful space, right? This is not a conversation about me denouncing that. It's a beautiful space, the human mind, the human brain, right? Just this wonderful space where I thought I was going to spend my life studying it and researching it. And I did spend many years in research here studying motor control patterns and traumatic brain injury potential therapies and working with stem cell therapies and doing all we could to understand how it functions and what goes wrong with it in this beautiful, beautiful space. Then me starting to have experiences in the lab, right? Because I'm in the lab, oftentimes alone, in a fume hood, pipetting day after day, being super careful, super precise, taking each step, back in the office, doing all the calculations, and starting to recognize sensations in my body, not really being able to know how to handle it. Starting to recognize what we could easily call anxiety these days, right? And this is many years ago. So I know at this point, it's much more common to be able to, like, oh yeah, that's anxiety. But back then, all I had learned was to live in my head. And anytime a feeling or an emotion, sensation came up, I was taught to push it away because it's a distraction. It's a distraction from the very important work that I was doing right here. But starting to feel and, pushing it away and saying, no, I can't deal with that now. And, then the next time, as it does, it gets a little bit louder and louder. And you spend enough days, weeks, months, years alone in a lab with nothing else but your stem cells and stem cells in a dish, right? Not my stem cells, the stem cells I'm working with in a dish. And the space and time, it just becomes hard to ignore the things that keep coming up. And that anxiety, that gut feeling, right? That gut feeling that makes me really start to question, like, what am I doing here? And following that out into the corporate world, right? Because I started to understand well enough that maybe this wasn't the path for me. So I went to the corporate world, and feeling it so strongly there that, maybe I shouldn't be here. You know, all the different things again that arise, those sensations in your gut, or that anxiety, or, turning into some depression and just having no energy, literally having no energy to do simple work. Our bodies tell us things, right? Our bodies are always trying to communicate with us. But as we walk through life in this way we've been taught, mind over matter, oh, that's just a feeling, that's just an emotion, push that away. Our bodies want to tell us things, so they're going to. And when we don't listen, it gets louder and louder and louder and louder. And that's what happened to me. And it all really came to a tipping point or an explosion during 2020, when now all of a sudden I had so much time, and all that was left to do was to feel. I could only keep my head distracted for so long. I had to start feeling. And when I did at this point, it was too much. It was too much. I've had a meditation practice for many, many years now, going back into my college days when it started. A meditation practice, very much so from a mind space, from a notice a thought, let the thought go. Notice the emotion, let the emotion go. Noticing these different parts of myself, but always holding the intention, the focus where I wanted it to be. Of course, where did I want it to be? On my important work in the world. Now in a space where things had built up so much that this practice, this mindfulness meditation, I couldn't do it anymore. Because I would sit in practice and I would go into quiet, and it was too much. I could not be there. I would sit down to practice, and all of a sudden anything else in the world would be more important. I would sit and practice and it would feel horrible, and I couldn't do it anymore. So at this point I recognized that something's wrong. And it's these times where we have so much time. So a yoga teacher training comes across my radar and I'm like, cool, cheap yoga online teacher training, like, why not? I've been telling myself for years that I need to do more yoga, and I know, I've been studying enough yoga philosophy that I know that this philosophy would help me. So I sign up for yoga and I get fully intent and focused on, I'm in this. I'm going to do these practices. And I've been in these spaces for, long enough where I'm like, okay, if I put my attention and focus on something, I'm going to do it. I know myself well enough that I can, when I get into that space, I can put my focus on something. I can do the work. So my yoga teacher training comes along. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do the yoga because it's a teacher training, and you have to do all the things and check all the boxes. And yeah, I can do that, no problem. But it requires me being in practice. It requires me doing yoga. So I show up on the yoga mat, like really, really focused. I'm totally going to do it this time. I show up to the yoga practice, and all of a sudden, everything else in the world is more important. The next day, I show up on my yoga mat, and I'm fully focused on, I'm so going to do the practice this time. And I go into practice and I just feel like I'm on fire and I just can't. And day after day and week after week and month after month unfolds. And once again, I find myself, I can't do yoga. I cannot get myself to do yoga. And it becomes a battle with myself, right? Does this, maybe I'm here chattering a lot. So maybe a moment to pause here and like, does this ever happen to you, right? Where you get so fully focused on something and maybe you're like me and you're really good at, like, I am so good at getting myself to do the thing I want to do. But then you show up to a particular something and you just can't. Maybe it's something with food, like maybe it's changing the way you eat or bringing in an exercise. Or maybe for you, you're like me and it's a yoga or other sort of embodiment practice, right? You show up and now there's this thing and you just can't. So I would go to battle with myself. I would get so upset and angry. Like, why can't I get myself to do this thing? So the months go by and I bring in more trainings because I'm so curious about this at this point. I train as a yoga therapist. I start training in different fields of trauma healing, right? Starting to understand different things. And then one day it finally clicks. One day it finally clicks that the reason I can't get myself to do yoga is it's too much. It's too much. I spent 20 something odd years in a world teaching me to live out of my head and push down my feelings and I was really good at that. And my body spent years and years and years trying to speak up. And when I couldn't listen, it all built up and up and up. So when I finally was like, okay, I'm in this, I'm going to feel now, it's too much. It's too much. It was too much. So from there, what do we do? What do we do when the thing that's promised as this is my path of healing, but I can't do it? It's just making things worse. It's triggering. It's making me feel awful. Right? What do we do then? So this is the fun part. This is the fun part that's not always so fun. It can be incredibly frustrating. It's the space where we get to understand ourselves. It's the space where we get to take careful steps, where we get to not necessarily dive in head first, but carefully take steps as we learn to know ourselves, as we get to know ourselves, as we bring in a practice, try it out, see for ourselves if it works, if it's supportive, if it's harmful. I spoke more about this in the prior video. So if you're confused about where I just went at this point, I do recommend that you go check out, I'll put it as the first link down in the comments. Healing ourselves, our nervous systems, and all those other parts of ourselves that are involved and really show up in our felt experience in this world. It's an individualized process. It has to be. It has to be because me, as compared to you, we're going to be wired a little bit differently. We're going to have different beliefs. We're going to have different patterns. We have to be able to learn to be in this embodied experience in this world, we have to get there in our own way. And of course, there's many amazing teachers and therapists and other support that can help serve as a beautiful guide, knowing that that's what they are, a guide, and that it's you as your own fully embodied self that gets to take the steps. You are the one that gets to be in action. And because you're the only one that can feel your feelings and feel your sensations and emotions and witness your thoughts, you're the only one that can get you through these spaces. So I'm going to throw in a fun curveball here. If you're new to me, this platform, this may come out of left field. Is that the phrase? I don't know baseball. I think that's the phrase. It may come out of left field. If you know me, then it won't be so surprising. But as I'm there training as a yoga teacher, a yoga therapist, trying to heal myself, just completely frustrated, infuriated might be a more accurate term. Like, how? I know that it's so important to heal my nervous system and heal this trauma and be able to heal this anxiety and be able to be more embodied, but I can't get myself to do the things that all my teachers, all the books are telling me to do. So what did I do? I signed up for a 100-mile race. I signed up for a 100-mile race because I know that as a trail runner, the most therapeutic space I can find myself is out in nature with my feet on the ground. I knew that, right, from my experience, that when I spent hours out on the trails, that I would experience the most profound healing. There was this time, I'll share this story. There was this time about exactly a year ago, I took a trip out east to a yoga therapy workshop, week-long workshop to learn about trauma healing and anxiety, depression. And I spent a week learning these practices, and I got to talk to my brilliant teacher and explain how I can't get myself to do yoga. I'm like training as a yoga teacher, I'm helping people, they're having these amazing experiences. Everyone around me, it's completely changed their life. I step onto the yoga mat and start to move and breathe, and I get triggered. So he helped me to understand myself and, gave me some guidance and, helped me understand it all. Then bringing in what I knew to be true based off of my experience, bringing in these different yoga concepts, but applying them in a space where I knew was most healing. Out on the trails, out running up and down mountains. And I could spend some time here telling you why that is. We could get into some of the mechanism and pathways involved in the nervous system. I could talk about how I was so pitta imbalanced and I needed to, we could get into these things, and maybe someday I'll bring in a more technical conversation. But for today, keeping it to my experience in this story and my truth, right? Knowing my truth, knowing this doesn't help me. What does help me? signing up for a crazy race, which made sure that I was out on the trails as often as I could be, created this container for me to be outside on the trails as often as possible, which immersed myself in this very therapeutic space. And as I bring in this kind of crazy story, right? It's this piece that we have to be so aligned with our truth, because I know there are some situations, I've talked a little bit about this. One day I'll talk more about it with rock climbing, right? I've been in the rock climbing space where people talk about how healing and therapeutic and life transforming rock climbing is for them. And to a degree, I am in total agreement, because for a long time, rock climbing totally served me. And then I got a little carried away with myself, and I did that thing where I got super focused and was like, this is so good for me. I need this in my life. And I found that that was really just a story. That was my ego. And I wasn't actually embodied. So what happened in that space was actually a lot of harm that was caused. I've been in this space with running too, where I hear those stories, oh, running is so good for you. And I had had a few experiences where, oh, running makes me feel good. So I kept pushing myself and experienced harm. But here in the space taking place last year, being finally being in a space where I could be so in tune with what was actually alive in me, feeling the support, feeling the grounding that I now know is essential when it comes to nervous system healing, trauma healing, anything falling under that bucket. Grounding and support, feeling safe, is essential. And out on the land, feet down on dirt and rock, I felt so grounded, so fully safe and grounded down into the dirt and the rock, supported by Mother Nature. And I could move. I could move just like we do in yoga, little different asana than warrior pose or crow pose, running. It's a different movement, but it's still moving and breathing. Well, I found out in these spaces that the energy that needed to move could move. And that's really, really the essence of trauma healing, nervous system healing, right? When we talk about all those feelings, experiences that we've pushed down, and that's, it's a very complicated space. So I don't at all want to make you think that I'm trying to help you understand fully what it is. But from my perspective, what I understand now is that's really what trauma healing, nervous system healing is so much of letting energy move as we're grounded, as we're supported, as we're feeling safe. So out on the trails, I could be moving at an intensity that created the space for things to move. Oh, I'll finish up this story and then we might start to close down. Being out east, running out in the Adirondacks, I think I spent 5 days climbing the 46ers, the mountains out in the Adirondacks. And I was like, okay, how many of these can I climb in 5 days? And I'd pick a set of them and I'd go for it. I'd start running and climbing up the mountain. And it'd be beautiful, and I would just feel so like, oh, this is so great. I love nature. This is amazing. And then I'd start having these random thoughts, and then I would start, getting a little angry, or like a negative emotion. A negative emotion would just start to take over, and I'd find myself caught up on these thought spirals and like, what is going on? And I think around day 3, I caught on that these were these traumatic experiences. These experiences that I had left an imprint in me and I hadn't been able to deal with in any other way. But here out running, held, supported, moving, I had created a space where it was ripe. It was time for these things that I'd kept buried in me to move. Again, by about day 3 or 4, I think I had caught on because I found myself so angry about an interaction I'd had with a sibling, and I'm like, why am I thinking about this person and this one random experience? And it hits me like, oh, that experience really hurt me. And it hurt me at a time that I was very vulnerable, and I must have buried that. And I see how that's been speaking up, but I haven't been able to work with it. But here it is. I'm going to let it flow. I let it flow through me, then it was gone. Then I can move on to the next thing and the next thing. And then sometimes we revisit an old thing, but that's a whole other conversation about the healing process. Fun times, guys. Fun times running 100 miles, training for 100 miles, doing my deep trauma work. I hope you know, though, that I bring that up. It's a fun story. I think it makes it easier to talk about these sorts of things, but really, really using it to support the point that each of our own healing journeys, it's going to be unique to us. And, 99% of you watching this video can call me crazy and how I'm totally missing the mark, because how could signing up for a 100-miler actually be healing? And that's crazy. And so it's standing in our own truth. Again, being able to hold space for what is actually healing for me. Is it to go to a yoga class? Is it to go to a slow, gentle yoga class? Is it to go to a more intense yoga class? Is it to go hike out in nature? Is it to go run? There's so many different beautiful ways that we can do this. Always, always, always holding space for being the master of your own healing. You get to be the expert here. As you call upon teachers, as you call upon trained specialists, right? Bring in the support, bring in all the support that you need. Don't do it on your own. I've made that mistake too. Don't do it all your own. Bring in the support you need. Always, always, always standing in your truth. And only you can do that. Fun times with difficult concepts. Recognizing that these really are difficult concepts to talk about. With that, knowing, if I've sparked anything in you and you want to know more, leave a comment, send me an email directly, Katie@upwardslopes.com. go onto my website, sign up for a free 20-minute conversation. We can talk about your situation, see if I can help you or if I can maybe guide you to someone who I think could maybe help you more. Again, so many beautiful ways in our world today to get the support that we need as we all go through this very important process that is healing. And I think I'll end on that note. I really do believe that it is one of the most important things we can do. For decades, centuries, millennia, we were taught to separate our heads from our bodies, mind over matter. Don't feel your feelings, that's weakness, right? And it messed us up. And that trickles out into a whole world that's messed up. The most important thing we can do is heal ourselves, to take that first step, or maybe it's your 10th or 100th or millionth step, to keep healing from the patterns that cause such harm to ourselves, such harm to our world. We can't continue going down that path anymore. It's not an option. It's an option that doesn't lead to a future very soon if we keep choosing that mind over matter, that, from my head, I know best. We have to bring in this fully embodied experience in this world. With that, it's a moment to maybe feel your feet on the floor, find your breath, take a few full breaths, feeling what's alive for you right now. It's alive for you to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, to continue to help me build up this platform here. It's alive for you to schedule a call with me or check out our membership. Go find a yoga therapist, go take a walk in nature, go read a book, take a nap, make some good food. Just another moment here, really checking in with yourself. What's alive in you? Then ending this video, go and take action on that thing. And when the time is right, I look forward to seeing you in whatever the next space is that we find ourselves in.